When we were talking about functions in earlier chapter, we had to define a function in order to call it. Similarly, we have to define a blueprint or class in order to use it. In the last lesson, we defined the triangle class or a triangle blueprint, but we haven't created any triangle yet. We just defined the attributes and behavior of a triangle in a blueprint. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to create individual triangle instances in our program. An instance is an object created from the class blueprint. Just like we make building from blueprint in real life, we use a class or blueprint to create objects or instances in code. Thinking back to our triangle class, a triangle has a base, height, and three sides. An instance of a triangle, say named triangle A, could have a base 15, height 8, and side with length 15, 8, 17. Another instance of a triangle could have base 3, height 2.598, and side length 3, 3, and 3. From our single triangle class, we can create as many instances as we want, and each instance will have its own base, height, and side length attribute variable. So how do we create these instances? We use a special method or behavior called constructor. Every class has a constructor, and it's how we create and initialize each triangle we want to use in our program. It's how we can create triangle A with a specific base, height, and side length values, and then construct triangle B with different attributes values. We call this a special function inside the triangle class. What does constructor look like? Since it's a function, it has a name, and the name is always the same as the name of the class. So in this case, triangle. Then we have open close parenthesis for the inputs to the function and brackets for the implementation of the function. Right now they are empty. For the return type, the constructor always return an instance of the class. In this case, an instance of triangle class. We don't have to state it in the definition of the method because it's already built into Java to expect that behavior. In the implementation, we won't be using the return keyword either because no matter what we do in the constructor, it will always return an instance of the class. In this case, triangle. In constructing a triangle instance or triangle object, we will want to initialize its attributes with values. We will want to give a value to the base, the height, and the side of the triangle. We could set these to any default value, but ideally this constructor would be dynamic and on the fly decides what value to give to these attributes. To do this, we can add parameters representing each triangle attributes to this function, just like our parameters to other functions. Each parameter has a data type and a name. Each parameter doesn't have to have the same name as the attributes their data represents, but it is often the case that this is so. This might look a little intimidating, but stick with me. This was tough for me too when I first got started with Java. With parameters, we have access to appropriate values we want to assign to each of the attribute. To access the attribute variable for the object we are trying to construct, we use this keyword and the dot operator. The this keyword helps our program makes a distinction between the attribute variable and the parameter variable. We use the word this because we are talking about an attribute of the triangle we are constructing rather than the parameter variable. When we use the dot operator on the keyword this, we can access the to be created instances attribute variable. This allows us to access the instance we are creating, base, height, and side lengths, so we can initialize them. With the code below, we are initializing the attributes of the new triangle with values of the corresponding parameters. In the constructor, we initialize the triangle we are creating base attribute with the values given in the base parameter. We also initialize new triangle height attribute with the value given in the height parameter, and so on for each attribute of the triangle we are creating, and that's our constructor function defined. How do we use it? Just like any other function, we will call it with arguments, values, and it will return a triangle. The only difference is that because we are creating a new triangle object or a new triangle instance, we have to use the new keyword. In this example, we create two variables with the data type triangle. One triangle is named triangle A and the other is called triangle B. Then we use the new keyword and call the constructor with the appropriate attribute values. It returns a triangle that is now stored in the respective variable. The triangle A instance will have a base with the value 15, height with the value 8, side length 1 with 15, side length 2 with 8 and side length 3 with 17. The triangle B instance will have a base with value 3, a height of 2.598 and all side lengths with value 3. Now you might be thinking triangle is now a data type, and yes, it is. It is a data type now. When we create a class, we are essentially creating a new way to store a group of data. Just think about all those double values we are storing. Our class is one particular way we have decided to store and organize data about triangle. This means when we create a triangle, store it is in a variable or perhaps even use it as a parameter, we must remember to use triangle as our data type. Let's try pulling all this together by defining our first class in Java and creating instances from it using a constructor in the next chapter.